creators, so here we go. So next on our agenda, I'd like to have you introduce our speaker for today.
Happy to do that. Seems that everybody that's stepped up here has mentioned the upcoming elections, so I'm sure that everybody here is very much aware of that. In addition, which I assume you're all aware that we have North Carolina's one of the states with early voting, and it's a very interesting race to say the least, and the turnout that I'm advised is going to be huge. So we've invited today from the Buncombe County Election Board, Ms. Trena Jackson, who has served as the Director of Elections for the last 13 years. Trena?
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. Also, thank you to the club for supporting kids voting from the very beginning and being such a vital part of that organization. My staff and I, we just feel that is so important to teach children and to encourage parents to come to vote with them and do it as a family event. And hopefully, they don't like to hear this, but what I'd like to see is not a need for kids voting anymore. If we could get to a really large percentage of adult voters and it just become part of our fabric. But anyway, that's a little bit about that. I do appreciate all of your help in that, because we've been a part of that for a long time. I've learned over the years just to tell you a few things about what I need you to know, and then let you find out from you what you would like to know. And our time will be spent together much more efficiently and productively. First, I'd like to report that we do have 15 sites open, and we have already voted, we broke 50,000 voters last night. So we are very hopeful that we will take care of 50% or more of the eligible voters in Buncombe County between now and Election Day. Over 50,000. We've already voted over 50,000. So we're really excited about that, because the more we can do that, the more we make it easy for people when they come to vote on Election Day, and the better their experience is going to be. We certainly do expect between 75 and 80% of the registered voters to show up this year. Of course, we're planning for 100, and hopefully 80% will be what we'll see. So I really would like to encourage you. How many of you have voted early already? That's great. Those of you that have not, I would encourage you, if you're ready with your choices, to go ahead and get that taken care of early in the week. I know this is Tuesday, I think. But please go ahead and get that taken care of if you've made your decision, because people are going to do what they're always going to do, which is procrastinate. And as we progress towards the end of the week, those lines are going to be longer and longer. And come Saturday, they'll be around the building probably. So if you want to do that early, take advantage of it sooner rather than later.
What's a more typical number?
A more typical number for a presidential election
Of early voters. Will you repeat the question, please?
Okay, his question was, what is a more typical number for early voters? Unfortunately, that's a difficult question to answer, because every single election is different, and we continue to increase the number of our early voting sites. We began with 5, we then pushed it to 8, then pushed it to 10, and now we have 13. So it pretty much increases, right along with the increase in the number of sites. I do think that more and more people are taking advantage of it just because they have challenging lives, challenging careers, etc. And I was talking earlier, I just don't know how in the world we would survive an election like this if we didn't do that. It's just not fair to voters to try to get 170,000 people to do the same thing in the same day and expect to walk in and walk out. So, a couple things I would like to tell you before I take questions from the rest of you as well. Tell your friends and family and neighbors, if you have neighbors that have moved in around you or into your apartment complex or whatever, that if they have not registered in Buncombe County, they still have time to do that between now and Saturday. They can register and vote at the early voting site. Now, if you want to vote on election day, you would have had to meet that October 10th registration deadline. But this is a new law that the General Assembly passed last year, I believe it is. And so they can register and vote during the early voting period. And we have had at least 1,000 people take advantage of that new program already. They do have to provide some ID that proves that they live here in Logan County. So, tell your friends and family that there is also a machine in every single precinct that can help them if they have any type of visual issues. The contrast is there. It's an audio machine as well. It can help people also if you have any mobility issues that makes it hard for you to circle in the oval. So be sure and ask for that machine. If you know, pass it along, I said, to your friends and family if there's a need for that. And the name of it is the AutoMark. And if you will ask the people at the desk, they will let you use it. It's a wonderful piece of equipment. It's basically a great big pen. And it has audio capability. So blind people can use that as well. It's got braille buttons and it will lead you right to it. Okay, tell your friends and family also that it's a long ballot. Study it ahead of time. As you can see in front of you, it's a 2-pager. And let me give you my quick little rundown on the ballot. A straight party ticket does not vote for president. You must vote for presidency. Okay? If you do choose to vote a straight party ticket, you can cross over in races, and it will count your vote. However, if you do cross over in a multi-seat race, you must vote for every single candidate on the ballot. So on this year's ballot, the only multi-seat race is the commissioner. So if by chance you decide to vote one way as a straight party ticket and then decide on another person of the other affiliation in that particular race, you need to vote, circle in every single oval for the 4 people you want to vote for. The reason for that is that when you vote straight party, the machine says, okay, you want these 4. And then when you go over and you circle in another circle, then you've told it you want 5. And so what does it do? Nothing. Right, it doesn't know what to do, so it cancels the whole vote. It considers it an overvote and doesn't count anything. So if you do want to cross over in the commissioner's race, be sure and fill in all the others. All right, lastly, and I'll shut up. Don't forget the non-partisan races on the back. All of those races on the back are important. There are some write-ins available. If you're curious about the partisan write-ins, you can call our office and we will tell you those names. But the most important thing is to make your decisions ahead of time if you can and be ready. I tell people it's somewhat like a doctor's appointment. You know, we expect a lot of times everything in our life just to be easy and present itself. But voting takes a little preparation, just like you would if you went to the doctor. You have to know where to go. You have to know what to take with you when you get up. You have to know what to expect when you get there. So think about it in that way and try to be prepared. And it'll make your life much easier and experience voting much better. That's basically all I have to say. And I'll shut up and take questions. That's all be much better use of time. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Vince Angelo. I just wanted to ask you a question about, I guess I've lived in several states and I've voted many times. And I've always had to show some sort of identification. However, you mentioned before that you show some sort of identification somewhere, but when I voted again this year, there was no identification being asked of me. So I'm just concerned as to where does the state of North Carolina stand on that issue. Is it going to change or am I going to have to live with it?
How long have you been registered here?
3 years.
Until 2003, there were no numbers, identifying numbers required of first-time registrants at all. Since 2003, voters are asked to, when they fill out their application, you have to give us one of 2 things. either a driver's license number or the last 4 digits of your social security. Okay? What happens then is our database bounces off the social security database and or the DMV database.
No, they did not ask me.
He's talking about voting day, having to present identity.
Right, I know where he's going, but I'm talking about ID issue.
Yes.
First, from the beginning of the process, when you register to vote, you provided us with one of those numbers. And then I'm just telling you how it is in North Carolina. And then our database talks with their databases and matches up your name and numbers to make sure it all matches. No, North Carolina does not have a law that requires that people show identification at the polls. They do have a law that says if we were not able to verify those numbers, if you didn't give us proper identifying numbers when you register, then we are going to ask you for something when you show up to vote. Okay? That's how North Carolina is right now, but I think it is going to change. I don't feel any wave going on out there, any trend. I certainly can't speak for legislators. I do know that they seem to be concerned about the homeless, sometimes concerned about elderly citizens who haven't had any form of ID in years. And that can be the case. So that's the way it stands.
You might mention that early voting, same day registration is required for identity.
Yeah, if you do register and vote during the early voting process, we require some sort of identification that shows us that you do indeed live in Buncombe County.
No one asked. I did, I voted early. And no one asked, and I got upset, and I said, I'm taking out my wallet so you know who I am. And they said, well, you don't have to do that.
Well,
And I said, I feel better that I did.
But you know what, and I hope that didn't take it from you, because they're instructed not to. And here's why. If I'm working the polls, and I take your identification and I use it, because you offered it to me, and then the next person in line doesn't offer me anything, and North Carolina law does not require that we ask for a voter ID. In fact, we cannot ask for a voter ID. Then what does that look like? It looks like discrimination, doesn't it? And when will we hear about that? So that's the law. That's the law that we have to follow. And until they change it, your legislators are the ones that you need to talk to. Yes, sir.
If you listen to news, you get all kinds of information. And I would imagine you get bogus registrations, counterfeit, all. But in your opinion, is there a problem with that? What's your opinion? Do you think there's a need for identification?
Okay, are you talking just registration or actually voting? Registration?
Actually, identification that I have, such as the military or something, I've got my value when I go in there to vote.
Could you give him the mic? I can't.
I'm really wondering about, what is your opinion? Do you feel like there's a need for that, or there's not a need to have identification? You must not feel like there's a need for it because you're actually running that department, and you seem like there's not a problem, so to say.
No, it's not my place. I'm an administrator. I do what the North Carolina General Assembly allows us to do, and no more and no less. When they ask us for research, we provide it to them. But it is not my place to say what policies should be made in North Carolina. That's just not my place. Now, as far as fraudulent registrations, we see very, very, very few. Is there a fluff of those, people that move out and we don't get information? Certainly, and that's why there's a federal program that every 8 years the rolls do get purged. We haven't heard from you in 8 years, so there is a program that helps with that. Now, as far as voting fraud, as I said with voting machines, you cannot stand up here and give you absolutes. I cannot say that nobody has ever been able to do that. In fact, we have sent a handful to the DA over the last 14 years that I've been there. But the truth of the matter is there are so many checks and balances out there that we catch people before it ever gets there. And the other fact is getting people, and I don't mean to be facetious about this at all, but getting people to vote once is getting them to vote once is a challenge, much less twice. And it just takes so much effort for them to do that. And there's so many checks and balances out there that the percentage is very, very small, and it's very improbable that okay,
I'm going to ask a question just to clear this up with Vince. So if I went to an early voting site and today I said, my name's Vince Angelico, I want my vote, what would they tell me?
your name is what?
My name is, I will.
I walk in and I say, my name is Vince Angelico, I want to vote.
Are you registered?
No, he's already voted as Vince Angelico. Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. He did introduce himself, and I know him, so it's easy for me. But he's already voted as Vince Angelico. Now I walk in to another place down the road, some other part of the county, and say, I'm Vince Angelico, I want to vote. What happens?
They're going to pull you up on the computer and they're going to say, Vince, you've already voted.
Now, let's say that I went and voted as Vince Angelico. My name's John Reed, and then Vince Angelico pulls up and says, "I want to vote," and he really is Vince Angelico. What happens?
The real Vince will be given a provisional ballot. And then we will compare signatures, because every single voter has to sign. Whether you vote early or on election day, we have to have a signature. And then we start going back and doing the research and compare signatures, number one, to make sure which one of those matches his original registration. And if yours doesn't match that one, then we're coming after you.
But in the meantime, my vote has already been counted. You can't do anything about that.
Untrue. Every single vote, early voting is technically absentee voting, because technically you are absent from your precinct on election day. So every single ballot is coded. So if that were to happen, and we figured out that this second vote, the second Vince vote, was the true Vince vote, that's the one we keep, we go back and pull yours and we do not count it. And then we call the DA.
Vince, does that answer your question? Yeah. Because when I registered here from California, I had to show all kinds of ID to register, but then once I voted, and we didn't have to show anything in California to vote either. Once you registered, you were on the rolls.
Role playing. Yes, sir.
He says I can ask a question. I found that I was tired by the time I got from the president down to the county commissioners in filling out this long ballot. What would be the cost of running local elections separately from the national election?
The cost of elections went up dramatically when we went to paper ballots, first of all, because paper is expensive. The cost of a city election almost doubled. It's now around $80,000 just for the city precincts. A countywide election, of course, is going to cost at least $200,000, at least. It will be way more than that. That's not even counting the early voting program at all. That's about $200,000 in itself. So whether or not you have federal and state races on the ballot, basically you're piggybacking with them. If you take county races off the ballot and just have a county race, then the county's going to have to pay for that. So extremely expensive. At least $150,000 to $200,000.
Now, that's
Very
not-
least.
That's not a lot of money in the course of a whole year. Put it in cents a day.
That's the commissioners. We just went underwent a 3% cut, so I don't know what that would say to that. Yes, sir.
Two things, one of which a lot of the folks who moved here from some places may never have lived in a state that was covered by the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which North Carolina mostly is. And things that states used to do to prevent people from voting are covered in order to allow the greatest percentage of people to be able to register and to get their votes counted. So I think that's one thing to consider for folks here concerned about how North Carolina does it differently from where they came from. The other thing is that among the checks and balances are the poll workers. And I bet if you asked people to raise their hand if they've been a precinct clerk or judge or chief judge, if everybody raised their hand who's done that, you'd have a lot of us in here. Bob Hall, you're not raising your hand. Bob's been a chief judge for many years. But so your neighbors and your fellow citizens who are there from both Democratic and Republican Party representatives who are there to keep each other honest is part of that process of checks and balances. And you administer hiring and assigning people to do those jobs. So you might talk about that a little bit and where you get those folks from and what they do.
That is a good question because it's one of our biggest challenges is finding enough people to work on election day. The parties provide us with those names on a 2-year term basis. They provide us with the names for the judges, and they are appointed for 2-year terms. And then they also provide us with names to go out and find the assistants to go with them. Yes, indeed, both parties are always represented. Unaffiliated voters may not work in the precincts election day, which causes some concern.
Excuse me. Right now the setup is that the senior judges and the majority members of the board itself are from the party of the governor. This leaves a large group of people who are unaffiliated, frankly, out of the process. In Buncombe County, unaffiliated are actually more registered than Republicans, and it's true throughout the state. Is there any movement by anybody to get this inequity corrected?
I don't know of any. And I don't foresee that happening because, of course, the members that you have sitting down in the General Assembly are Democrats and Republicans for the most part. And here's the thought behind that, I believe, in that the checks and balances that Keith were talking about earlier are there. We know that the R's are looking out for the D's. We know that the D's are looking out for the R's to watch what they're doing. We know where they stand. We don't know who the unaffiliated are looking out for. Seriously, when you're working in a precinct, it's all about eyes and watching exactly what each other does all day long. You could be telling us you're unaffiliated, but really be a Democrat at heart and buddy up with this Democrat over here. So you see what I mean? We don't know who you're watching out for. And so until you can prove to the General Assembly to change that.
I'm just saying that it seems to me an equity that the majority party also has a majority. So if you have 2 Democrats and 1 Republican, the consensus would normally be the 2 D's are going to pal up. Or if it changes and the Republicans get in power, then the 2 R's are going to buddy up. Where in fact you have this large group of people out here who may or may not be party affiliated. That could be an impartial judge on these decisions. That's all.
Yeah, we'll just do one more question.
Yeah, I just have a question on the sample ballot. There appears to be several different samples. Some of them have the Board of Education on it, and some don't. Could you illustrate that? And maybe I could make a comment about the last question, is that the Republican Party is really the grand old party, and G comes between D and
Board of Education. Right. There are 8 different ballot styles in Buncombe County, and the reason for that is House and Senate, of course, and then Board of Education. It's a bit confusing because Buncombe County is a bit different than I think other counties in that we have school administrative units, and they don't match precinct lines. Okay? So some county voters may actually get to vote, some city voters may actually get to vote for Board of Education, but you have to live within the county school administrative unit to be able to vote for the Board of Education. If you live in the city administrative school unit, then you may not. And unfortunately, those lines don't match. And it does cause problems from time to time, but I think that things have gotten better. But that's something a lot of people don't understand. That's a good question.
Yes, thank you very much. Give her a chance. I'd like to say, I think I've been volunteering at the book at Weaverville, and I haven't heard a single complaint of anybody coming out speaking about the early voting. And so I think her organization has done a great job and continues to work quite well for us. So I'm certainly glad that she's not elected, that she's been earlier. So, Gary Jackson next week, so everybody be here. Meeting's adjourned.
Hey y'all, I'm Paula Dean. Since 1950, Civitans has been committed to improving the lives of people with developmental disabilities. That commitment continues today through Civitans in involvement in summer camps, vocational programs, and Special Olympic Games for great little people like my friend Sophie. So please help me and thousands of other Civitan members to make a difference by volunteering in your local Civitan club. Together, we can make life sweeter in your community.